This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. We're in Brooklyn, New York City once again for this week's episode of the podcast. Just a few stops on the L train past last week's episode, but over those 4 stops on the L train, everything has changed. They make hazy beer out here without any oats and have a whole different approach to yeast. Anyway, I'm at KCBC. Joining me for this episode are Tony Bellis and Bobby Rolandi. Welcome to the podcast, Tony.
Thanks for having us.
And welcome, Bobby.
Thank you.
Just so people can track your voices out there as you go through this. Through KCBC, folks that read Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine may remember our 2023 Best in Beer. That year in the lager issue, KCBC's Welcome to the Underworld, Hellas, scored a 99 with our blind panel. And of course, it was named one of our 20 best beers in 2023. Congratulations to you all.
Thanks. Not too shabby. Nice work, Bobby.
Thanks.
Good stuff out here. Coming from this brewery in Brooklyn. Oh, you should underscore for folks listening just how hard it is to make beer here in New York City. It is a difficult environment to do this. And you all are producing 7,000-ish barrels of beer per year out of this small brewery on a 15-barrel system here in Brooklyn. Brewing 3 turns in a day. I mean, it is some putting some serious work in. And so you all are focused on efficiency. You're focused on quality. Of course, it's New York City. You can't get away with anything but the best. And, you all have developed interesting and creative ways to make everything from the lagers that our judges have responded to even hazy IPA. And as I teased out there, you all have a different way of making a hazy IPA that we are going to talk about over the course of this using things like kveik yeast. We're going to talk a little bit about making West Coast style beers here on the East Coast because that's some of Bobby's West Coast roots come to play in all of that. And I think this kind of interplay between these different schools of brewing are always fascinating to explore. We're going to talk all about those things. But first, for years, G&D Chillers has chilled the beers you love, partnering with 3,000 plus breweries across North America and beyond. They're proud of the cool partnerships they've built over the past 30 years because brewing doesn't stop at 5 o'clock, and nor do they. They use quality components, expert craftsmanship, and constant innovation. With their 24/7 service and support, your brewery will never stop. Remote monitor your chiller for simple and fast access to all the information you need and gain peace of mind your operation is running smoothly. And brewers, what if your yeast could do more than just ferment? With Berkeley Yeast, it can. They bioengineer ordinary strains and they make them extraordinary, enhancing the flavors you want and eliminating the ones you don't. Now, in addition to competitive pricing, they're offering free overnight shipping on 5+ barrel pitches. Try it out. If you don't love it, they'll happily refund you. So why settle for ordinary when you can brew with better yeast? Visit berkeleyyeast.com to learn more and start brewing with science on your side. Also, as breweries expand beyond beer into other segments like mocktails and CBD beverages, Old Orchard is here to help. They can formulate custom blends featuring specialty ingredients. Whether trending flavor additions or nostalgic favorites, the next best thing is around the corner at Old Orchard. More information and free samples are waiting at oldorchard.com/brewer. That's oldorchard.com/brewer. As you all know, we normally kick off the podcast with some background and history. Why don't you each give me your personal backgrounds, and then we'll get into some brewery history after that.
All right, cool. I'm Tony. Previous to KCBC, I've spent a long time in the food and beverage industry, and spent about 11 years working in the coffee biz, and was very passionate about coffee and all things coffee, and really wanted to go into that as a business of my own. Moved back to New York City from the Bay Area in 2010 and had intent of, open a small coffee roasting company. It was kind of the start of the third wave coffee roasters. But I'd started homebrewing at the same time, when I was living in the Bay Area, and moved back to New York City and just really fell in love with that, and then started seeing some cool people open breweries that seem more approachable. Barrier Brewing was a good example. Opened a small nano brewery, and I was like, oh my God, maybe I can do this, and so really went down the path of, I think I'm going to do, I want to learn more about this. Went to brewing school, plugged my way around town, trying to get jobs, working at a homebrew store, got my foot in the door at a, great brewery called Greenpoint Beer Works. That was a big, prominent, contract brewing facility right here in the heart of Brooklyn. It was brewing for all kinds of, breweries in the city, from Kelso to the Heartland Brew Pub chain to, a lot of local breweries, throughout the state. It was a really good, place where we just banged out big batches of beer, and it was a good training ground, and at that point, started the path towards, making KCBC a reality.
Greenpoint. Yeah, for many years I lived in Long Island City, just north of Greenpoint, and spent a lot of time on there. In fact, I'm wearing my Polish Brewers Symposium shirt.
Nice.
Since I was in Williamsburg just earlier today, just south of Greenpoint, and I figured it was probably the right fashion choice for today.
Yeah, perfect. Greenpointers are going to love that.
Absolutely. I don't know if I'm going to get to tourist out there on this trip. We'll see.
Oh, it's a great spot. Great spot.
Phenomenal. All right, Bobby, what's your beer story?
Yeah, worked in food and beverage industry for a while. While I was going to school, I went to school out in San Diego State, and then was into beer out there. Didn't really work in it like professionally or anything like that. And then I moved out to New York City in 2013. Kind of just didn't know very many people, and like was into beer and kind of like needed a hobby. So I started homebrewing. Kind of got into it, was interested. I started hanging out at the homebrew shop. It's called Bitter Nesters. They're now closed, unfortunately. But
R.I.P. Bitter Nesters.
Yeah, John LaPala is awesome. But yeah, hung out there a bunch, and then they're like, "Hey man, like you kind of hang out here a lot." Like I'm like, "I do." And they're like, "Yeah, do you want like a job?" I was like, sure. And so at the time I was working in service. I was waiting tables in the city, and took a job 1-2 days a week. Tony was teaching classes.
We worked at the same homebrew shop. They kind of did the same thing to me. They're like, dude, you're in here like twice a week buying homebrew supplies. You want to teach Brewing 101? I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. Get a discount and get paid to do the class. Cool.
So yeah, like I ended up taking a job there, worked there for, 9 months or so, and kind of just wanted more responsibility there. But it's a small homebrew shop. They don't have a lot of staff.
Right.
And I kind of caught the bug on the craft beer thing. And they're like, hey, we can't offer you any more hours, but there's this brewery down the street that's hiring full time, cleaning kegs and kegging beer. If you want a job, I can put in a good word. So then I got a job at Greenpoint Beer Works working with Tony. And so I worked there for about a year and a half.
Still waiting tables to make real money.
I was still like supplementing my income. Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Because cleaning kegs did not pay like wait service in Manhattan.
You were probably still working 3 jobs at that point, right?
No, I was just working. Lower East Side.
Okay,
but just Saturday, Sunday brunch or Friday, something like that. But and then that place lost the lease on the building, and they ended up closing down that contract brewery. And then right as that was happening, Tony had left like 6 or 9 months prior, built out KCBC, and he hit me up right as that place was closing and was like, hey, we need a guy to just kind of do whatever. Everything. Deliver beer, keg beer, whatever, pour beer in the tap room. If you want to join us, like, go for it. So
go for it. It was maybe a little nicer than that.
But
yeah, we were working on opening KCBC. I was working with another guy that was working at Greenpoint Beer Works, and my other business partner, Zach Kinney. We'd kind of known each other through working in breweries and the homebrew scene and that kind of stuff. And we were all trying to like open breweries of our own, and then met each other and said, God, this is hard to do on your own. we should do something together, So the short version is, that's where Kings County Brewers Collective came in. And I think right after we brewed our first batch, hit up Bobby and I was like, all right, we need to hire somebody.
Yeah.
Because I think the three of us thought we could do it all. I mean, it was really like us and some bartenders, and we're like, we're going to need somebody. Are you willing to do anything? And he was like, yeah, whatever you want. And he literally has done, he's done everything in this brewery in the past 9 years.
Yes.
So Tony, you guys decided to start this brewery, and obviously you're taking this passion for brewing that you have and want to create a business about it. But building any business in New York City is hard. Building a manufacturing business in New York City is even harder. Building a manufacturing business that makes a product that people ingest in their bodies that then has to be distributed fresh before it spoils is just immensely hard, especially in an urban environment like this. So, what was going to be your angle?
Naive to the realities of what we were about to get into. No, I think it was, we'd all been living
this
here.
Is how people become parents in this world.
This is how people become parents. You're just like, I think all of us, the three of us all kind of had worked for other people, all had a passion for beer, all really knew that we wanted to like do something of our own someday. And I love this city. I'd lived here for years, and then I moved to the Bay Area for 3 years. Love the Bay Area, but New York City's my place. So
New York City is the best city on the planet.
It's the best city on the planet. And so my wife and I like kind of made a rash decision to move back, and that was the like catalyst to, I was like, I don't want to keep working for other people. I want to do something of my own. I think, that was all of us in this starting it as like, let's do something on our own. And the city at the time was there was very few breweries. I mean, I moved here originally in 2001, and really the only thing of any note was Brooklyn Brewery. There was Heartland Brewery was a brew pub chain, and there was Chelsea Brewing in Manhattan, but very quickly I discovered Brooklyn Brewery, and we go there on Friday nights, and you could drink beer in the tap room there really cheap, and it was awesome. It was great. But that just seemed like a massive thing. I mean, that was clearly a very big business. They had a 50-barrel brew house and these huge things, and I just like never thought that that's something that I could do, and I think it was around 2010, 2012 that you started seeing nano breweries pop up, or just, breweries of a smaller scale. Barrier, was one example.
I remember in 2005 when Captain Lawrence opened up, and it's like, and we used to hop on the Metro North train, go ride at mountain bikes at Graham Hills Park.
Yeah.
And then after that, just popped down to the tap room. Back then, the laws sucked so badly that they couldn't sell you a pint. They could give you free tasters and then pay, and you could buy a growler to go. But you couldn't, like, for them, even at that time when they opened, you couldn't buy, a pint from them. And so we would just drink some samples, get some growlers, and then, take the train back to New York City. And that was that.
It was crazy about how the laws changed. Like our business plan changed in the middle of doing it because the law changed. And you couldn't serve full pints unless you were a brew pub.
Well, I remember when I moved here in 2013, you still went to Brooklyn Brewery and you paid you get the token, right?
A wooden token.
I still have some.
Yeah.
And then you just exchanged a token for beer because you couldn't pay like cash for beer. Weird.
Yeah. You technically, I guess, we're getting a tour, and the beer came with the tour or something like that.
Yeah.
There was some workaround. Yeah.
No, so New York State changed the laws, and actually, it's still like one of the most progressive states as far as, great laws for breweries. So,
they went the entire other direction with the farm brewery law and have just opened things wide out.
Fantastic. And it really changed our business model. All of a sudden we're like, oh, we can open a tap room and not have to have a full restaurant. We can actually sell New York State made cider and spirits. And it really like opened the door to, we're like, oh, we can do this. So, and that was, plugged away. And, we spent it, talking about manufacturing being hard in this city. It took us a year and a half just to find a space. And of course we set ourselves on the name of Kings County, which is the county that Brooklyn is in. we locked in on that name early on, and then we're like, oh God, that really limited us because we
Would have been cheaper in Queens.
yeah, we kept having real estate agents be like, you should look in Long Island City, Queens, and we're like, yeah, but our name's KCBC, and so long story short, we found a great spot here in the
Rockaway Brewing was in Long Island City, and they're pretty far from Rockaway. You could have just done whatever you wanted.
Exactly. So we're in the heart of Bushwick here in Brooklyn, and this neighborhood was. It was pretty cool when we moved in, and a handful of cool bars and restaurants, and it's really just blown up into the epicenter of what's cool in Brooklyn, and it's a really cool, vibrant neighborhood, just full of you have everything from vintage clothing stores to dope restaurants to all the weed you could buy, and it's pretty awesome.
This neighborhood is what Williamsburg used to be when I was living here in the 100%, city. Yeah, and now Williamsburg is definitely a well developed and different kind of place.
Yeah.
Long Island City. When I lived in Long Island City from 2003 to 2010, and I mean, when we moved down there, we lived a block behind PS1. It was ragtag, and now, of course, it's just completely overdone. Anyway, it's crazy to see how this city has developed.
It's wild. Yeah, I've been here, 25 years, coming up on 25 years, and it's just blows my mind every day. What it's constantly changing. It's why I don't think I can ever leave permanently.
That's why I enjoy coming back. Well, let's talk again about that kind of creative approach, because you will definitely have a point of view in the beer that you make, and some strong ideas about how you make it and and what you make. So we're going to talk about that. But first, Indie Hops brings Oregon's natural wonder to brewers, celebrating 16 years of delivering compelling new hop varieties along with classics that thrive in Oregon's terroir. Indie is the original source for Strata, Luminosa, Lorien, Meridian, and their newest variety, Audacia. Release your creativity with the magic of pure, uncut Oregon hops from Indie. Indie Hops, life is short. Let's make it flavorful. And Extra Tough has been making rugged and reliable boots for 75 years. Built for the harshest conditions, the Legacy Collection styles are oil, acid, and chemical resistant with a non-slip rated outsole. Be prepared for whatever comes your way and shop the latest Extra Tough boots on extratough.com. That's XTRATUF.com. Also, if you're launching a brewery or acquiring an existing one, it's last call for a brewery workshop and Newbury Accelerator, September 14th through 17th in Fort Collins, Colorado. Over 4 days, we engage in panel discussions, technical brewery tours, networking, and small working group sessions that help you better understand and prepare for the challenges of brewery operation. There's just a couple spots left. Visit breweryworkshop.com for more information and to secure your spot. So you start up this brewery, and obviously, coming out of this brewing world, you've seen a number of sides of it. But you, in terms of what you're going to make, had some interesting ideas about the beers you wanted to, die on the hill for.
Yeah, I mean, I think when the three of us, I think the main thing we really wanted to do is not be very specific. We wanted to brew a lot of styles. I mean, I think. The first four beers we brewed was a hazy IPA, a lager, a strawberry guava fruited sour, and English
it was
mild.
It was like a pub beer.
A pub beer, yeah.
Bug bite, I think.
Bug bite, yeah, that's right. So we were very, and I think a lot of that was focus on, we knew we wanted like a diverse portfolio of beer for a tap room. We knew tap room was going to be a big focus. And then, we just wanted to also, have a place where each of us can kind of get our personality in it and just, and not be constrained to anything. And that was a little weird in 2016 when we were opening, because the East Coast was all about hazy IPA then. I mean, it was just like, we were too, like, no doubt about it. We wanted to brew hazy IPA. We were brewing hazy IPA, but it's not the only thing we wanted to drink. So, I think from day one, I think we say we defiantly have made some styles from the very beginning. I would say, lager and West Coast IPA were two that, it seems insane now that like we had a hard time selling lager, but we did. Like we were packaging lager, and man, we were like racing to like sell it in a 90-day period. Like, it was wild, and but you have a world that's drinking lager. They just really hadn't fully embraced craft lager or the price point of craft lager or whatever, and then West Coast IPA was the other, like, boy, West Coast IPA was a little bit of a like, kiss of death on the East Coast. You like, most breweries that were brewing hazy IPA did not brew a West Coast IPA, but we were
probably one of the first New York City breweries to start brewing West Coast IPA out here.
Yeah, outside of Brooklyn Brewery and Six Point that had been doing it, since that was all there was.
Well, like in this new, boom of New York City.
Yeah, the new school. Yeah. And same thing. It was like, God, those beers would take forever to sell. And they were literally a vanity project. I mean, they were literally these things that were just like, we're brewing them. I don't care if people want to drink them or not. We're going to find the people that want to drink them. And you build it up over a period of time. You find, bar and restaurant buyers that are also fans of those styles. And so they buy a keg from you, and maybe it sells slow, but they keep doing it. And then they build it up with their customers. And I mean, the West Coast IPA thing seems insane because, forever West Coast IPA has been at the top of the heap. It's like your Stones, your Sierra Nevadas, that kind of stuff. Like, they were still huge then. It wasn't like those weren't on grocery store shelves. But boy, if you're putting in 16-ounce cans, or you were of our generation, of like, breweries opening around that time, that wasn't cool in a lot of people's eyes, and we just kept doing it.
It took a while, but it ended up sticking.
Yeah, eventually we were like, oh, we're selling enough West Coast IPA. We should actually have a year-round West Coast IPA, and that happened a couple of years ago. We were like, okay, now we need a year-round core West Coast IPA, and we need rotating IPA, and that was a cool point. Being like, okay, cool, there's some diversity here. Where the rest of the country kept doing that. The West Coast did that.
Oh yeah,
they kept.
It never went away.
It never went away. The Midwest and South did that. Like, I'm from Minnesota originally, and you go back there, and you're like, no, everybody just kind of brews all the IPA styles. And the Northeast here, we went full on to these breweries developed this awesome trend and style, and really stuck with it. Which is awesome. I mean, I'm a sucker for hazy IPA. I love it. And,
All right, well, let's talk about hazy IPA. Let's talk about the way that you approach it, because obviously this is the context now. You all love making West Coast IPA. You love making lager, but you also love making hazy IPA. And that's not just a cynical, we make it because it sells. It's hey, there's opportunity for us creatively within this space of hazy IPA to do something that we think is interesting. And so, there's also a market reality to that, where making the same exact beer in the same exact way as some of the other well-known, hazy IPA makers here in Brooklyn and Queens and Massachusetts and Vermont or whatever, isn't going to get you very far. If having a personality and having your own way of doing things and that stands out, it's actually, some means of differentiation. So like, how did you all start thinking about that creatively, and where did that development ultimately take you in terms of, the kind of space that you now, design hazy IPA within?
I mean, I think it started back, we used to buy a lot of yeast.
Yeah.
Yeast used to be a bigger component of like what we would experiment with. We bought a lot of different yeast pitches and liked messing around with a lot of yeast styles, and I'd love to keep doing it. It's not very economical. But I think we'd messed around for a long time, going through the whole gamut of, London 3, Conan, Chico, whatever, like everything you could use and people were using, we really experimented with on hazy IPA. And then, I don't know what year it was, but the Voss kveik sort of became this,
probably 2017, 2018.
Yeah. Like yeah. And I think we tried that yeast strain on a one-off beer, and we're like, kind of for multiple reasons, there was the, like, you can ferment at a higher temp, and it was a quick fermentation time. very different flavor profile. Kind of cutting through with all the experimentation of that, we realized like, the quick fermentation time doesn't mean it's we very quickly found doesn't save on time from brewing to packaging. We really keep the same amount of time. It just kind of happens over a different curve, but we really fell in love with the flavor profile of it. And it's just, it's killer for, if you're trying to make something juicy, it's just a no-brainer.
Yeah. I mean, it was also, it worked well on our, we were fermenting it with our fruity sours, and it's, quick fermentation, like the flavor profile. And it was unique. And I think that, and it's a workhorse. So, we ultimately like kind of locked in on that. And, we've tried.
Where do you get the Voss kveik from?
Omega.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, and they're great. We've been working with Omega for a long time, 6-7 years, something like that. Yeah,
they're so smart, and they're just like always ahead of the curve, and like great team to work with, just to like reference on process and how to use things. And
very responsive. Always answer any of my questions. They're awesome.
Yeah, they rule.
But yeah, and then we've tinkered with putting. Hop wise, like putting a little bit of hops, in the kettle. And for a while, we were just doing only whirlpool hopping and big dry hop and, contact time and, fermentation temperatures. We've messed around with all of it.
The whole thing. And I think that yeast strain, I think some of it was like really dialing in like that. I think we hit a differentiation point where I think we all kind of liked something a little drier, a little cleaner. I don't think any of us necessarily love like the London 3. I think for me a lot of times it's a little cloying and sweet, and I like it in some styles and not others, and but I think that was very prominent that that's what people were using, and I think we very quickly realized that we're like, oh, this is cool because it is different. Like we have a city, we have amazing breweries here in New York City. I mean, we were sitting there opening up after breweries like Other Half and Finback and Evil Twin and all that. I was like, we have amazing IPA makers in the city. How are we going to be different? It's like don't chase your friends. How do you run alongside them? And I think that really became a point for us.
Yeah, and I think the Voss makes the beer a little bit more drinkable versus. I mean, I'm not like,
it's preference.
It's preference. Like I'm not throwing shade at London 3.
Sure,
but I think it's just a little bit more palatable. I think, in my opinion.
In terms of like fruit and flavor expression, you mentioned that it still hits that kind of juicy and fruity thing. How does that differ from say London Ale 3? What does the Voss highlight for you versus and then
I don't know, Bobby, what do you think?
My opinion, I think it dries out a little bit more. It's still fruity and tropical. The London 3 is like more pillowy. It's got a lot more mouthfeel body to it that expresses itself differently.
Yeah, I think that mouthfeel and body of London 3 is the
thing that
characteristic thing for me.
Yeah.
In terms of dryness, you've now used dry in referring to hazy IPA, which is not which I mean it's all relative, obviously.
Yeah, I mean not really dry, but like
where do these tend to end for like a 7% or an 8 or 8.5%?
Our flagship hazy is finishing about 3.5, 3.4, 3.5.
Yeah, that's relatively lean for that style.
Yeah, and I think some of that is like I think we talk about that. Garrett Oliver said it years ago. It was like you should be able to drink 3 of any beer. Like a balanced beer, you should be able to drink 3. I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing Garrett.
Sure.
Don't mean to mess that up. But like, I love that philosophy of like, something should be drinkable enough that like, I want to sit down and drink 3 of these. And I think we accomplished that, It's like, it's a little, little drier than what some people might be doing, but I think it just really makes it much more sessionable, and pairs really well with food. I think that's the big thing that I think I think sometimes IPA is actually challenging to pair with food because it is this thing of its own, and you're like, oh, I got this beverage that's really complex and rich and has all this characteristic to it, and it's sometimes it's hard to eat it with a burger or drink it with a burger, and we want this to be like complex enough that you're like, oh my, you want to sit and sip it like a glass of wine and really like dig into the flavors of it. Or if you're just mowing the lawn and need refreshment, you can like knock back a 12-ounce can of it and just like drink it down. That's I think that's kind of our goal.
Yeah. Well, let's build it up. Like, talk to me about the grist bill in this. You mentioned before we started talking that oats are not really your jam. That you lean on different adjuncts, which is interesting and makes some sense given now that we're talking about the way that you want this to feel in the glass itself. Since it's going to be a drier finish, and the hazy kind of approach there and the juicy approach is there for the overall feel, but you still want it to now be maybe a touch snappier.
Yeah, we played around with all the malts back before we've become like a little bit older of a brewery. We used all the English malts. You
guys worked in a homebrew shop, so using all the malts is kind of the thing that you do.
That was in the DNA.
We used, it was really cool, and like it was cool to be a brewer here in the earlier days because we were really tinkering with like Thomas Fawcett, like all these different. We weren't just using raw or like American base malt. We were using all this stuff. And we played around with oats, rye, all this stuff. And I think that when it came down to it, like we'd done so many iterations of hazy IPA with different malts, and we kept coming. Zach, Tony, and I kept coming back to like what do we like, and we tended to like the beers that had more malted and flaked wheat in it versus like oats, which I think a lot of people like to throw into their hazies. And I'm not like, I don't dislike oats, but like we just preferred that. And
I love the mouthfeel of oats, 100%, I get why people do it. And that makes a beer that I really like. I think again, it was like, what's going to make us not like some other people that are around us.
Yeah, it definitely like, every time I was trying to like get a bag of malt from, other half or some, neighbor brewery because our shipment from BSG didn't show up or they got lost in transit. And I'm like, hey man, can I get some flaked wheat? And they're like, nope, only flaked oats. And I'm like,
yeah. We're like, we're doing this different.
Yeah. But yeah, you could get flaked wheat to save your life around here.
No, exactly.
So yeah, we're like the only people that mess with flaked wheat.
I think so.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Just feels like a through line with this. Same with the West Coast IPA that you make here on the East Coast too, right?
We use the Golden Naked oats in some hazies. It's in probably like a 10% of the grist, 10-15% of the grist for. We ended up creating a bunch of templates, like probably 3 of hazy, and
templates. Tell me about that.
Just like, we'll have
creates a creative structure for you, right?
That we can kind of build off of because we did so many different like recipes.
I think in the first 3 years, we used new ingredients just to use new ingredients. It was like, we weren't intentionally trying to do it, but we're like, can we go to BSG's catalog and use everything over the next year?
CMG, yeah, really
like constantly, and it was so much fun. I mean, we learned a lot, and that was part of the process of like learning, and then
it was really cool. Like I was, getting to like place all these orders and like, co-create a lot of these beers with you guys. And I really enjoyed doing that. But then we got to a point where, okay, like we've done 150 different beers of hazy IPA. let's figure out what we like the most and try to like narrow it down to some templates to then work off of. And if you want to like, go a little off the beaten path and, slide some different malt in there, we can, but like, let's have these structures set up.
So what are the templates? And I think this makes sense because, when you're talking about creativity, like, if there's infinite creativity, then there's just nothing for a lot of people to hold on to. Even great artists will have a general style and approach, and they'll paint within a palette, and they have a general, range of subject matter that they're going to paint within, so that, there's a through line through their work, and it connects with each other. And since we're in New York City, I can use art metaphors and get away with it. But if you paint a different painting every single time, it gets exhausting, and also it doesn't necessarily allow you to explore all the intricacies, within each one of those things. So then, you come up with these templates, but they need to be different enough so that if people come, if they order a couple of different IPAs, and people who order IPAs do order a couple of different ones.
Yeah, we want them to be different.
We know that's the place where people explore. So, so what are some of, what have you settled into in terms of these kinds of templates?
Yeah. We do like a lean, pills base. We use mostly raw North Star pills. And that's, anywhere between 60 and 70% of the grist. And then we lean heavy on the flaked wheat and then malted wheat. But then some of the variations can be, we'll sub some of that malted for unmalted. And we'll flip the malted for flaked. So there'll be more malted wheat than flaked wheat. And then we have like one hazy, recipe that we like to use, the golden naked oats. And then, so we'll have probably like, 3 or 4 iterations of like just wheat and pills beers. And then we have the one, golden naked oats. And then we'll scale it from like a single IPA to double IPA. We don't really do triple IPAs anymore. We haven't in a long time.
Haven't in a while.
But, and then, we have a hazy pale base that we actually throw a little bit of pale ale malt and North Star pills. And then we use a little bit of flaked rye. But that's like the only beer that we do that with is our flagship or one of our core beers. But yeah.
Yeah, I think kind of finding these templates, I think we did a lot of experimentation, and within experimentation, you're like, well, out of those 4 beers we made, that one was way better than everything else. So then you start to be like, well, why are we doing the other 3? I think we learned early on. It took a couple of years, but the initial kind of mantra was like, it's express all these different people who are brewing their brewing style, and it was really trying to be individualistic, and then realized like, actually what we liked better, and also I think what the customers like better, is to be able to like be like, oh, what I really like is KCBC's West Coast rotating IPAs. I like that, and I know what I'm going to get, and it's going to be, there's going to be a different hop, mix in each of these, but they make sense to me, and I know what I'm going to get. And I mean, imagine that. It's like, as much as customers want rotation, especially 5 years ago, people wanted rotation and they wanted new, but only so much. And I think especially like within a brewery and within a brand, kind of really locking on where, if people are getting a KCBC hazy double dry hopped IPA, you want them to know like the family that they're getting into, and if you're shocking them too much because you went and just like completely did some crazy experiment, some people you're going to like throw off and be like, oh shit, they don't know how to do it anymore, or something, so. I
think, to like piggyback off that, I think we got hung up too much on like the grist and the hops and all that. And like, I think, and for a long time, people were just doing new beers. And it's really hard to, put out a new one-off every time and have it be a hit when you're using new ingredients every time. So, settling on some of those like, canvases to work off of. And then, then we started working on the process and becoming more of a process driven beer. And I think that's where the beer gets better.
Got so much better.
Is like just dialing in just cellar technique.
Yeah.
So then, what were those changes? And I agree with you. Number one, and most breweries do this in the first few years, you start with natural selection, right? You have this broad diversity, and then ultimately, there were winners and there were losers in this, through this process, and you hone down into, the things that customers want from you the most, that you also figure out how to brew, even better, and those become the things. But in terms of, particularly in this hazy IPA space, what were some of those process improvements that now that some of that just wild creativity, started becoming more, focused? What were some of those process improvements that really improved those hazy IPAs for you?
Yeah, I would say, focusing on knockout pH, doing, troop drops, multiple times, first 5 days fermentation, focusing on that.
We should also mention you have a very fast production schedule here because, again, it's very difficult to make beer in New York City.
Yeah.
You need to move those tanks in less than 3 weeks. You can't just let stuff sit around and, let that excessive dry hop work itself out and let that burn kind of, precipitate out over 30 days. You need to be moving tanks faster than that.
Right. And we experienced all that at one point with burn and all that. And, just dry hopping at a colder temperature fermenting. We ferment kveik at 80, and then we soft crash, dry hop at 65. It gets, 2 days on the hops, 48 hours, crash it, move it. So we just try to minimize that contact time. So we're not pulling any kind of vegetal, burn, anything like that. So we really have worked out a really nice cadence with all our hop forward beers. That's the same with West Coast in pretty much everything. So
48 hours on hops.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny when you say that, thinking about how, this style in particular has changed. I mean, I remember when we first started, there was just, everybody from the best of them to the worst of them, breweries, there was so much oh, that beer is going to be really good in 2 weeks. There was just, we learned a lot of technique just from experimentation and working with each other. I think the industry at that time really, I think everybody was okay, there's got to be better process, better technique for this. And it was, there probably hasn't been a more experimental beer style. I don't know. I'm going to put it on record in probably 100 years. Until you, because I think
you can go back to pale lager in the early 1800s.
I think
where a certain style just took over the entire world of industrial beer production.
Yeah, and there were, the OGs were just, be all right, I'm going to try this technique, and then just all these, thousands of breweries trying to refine it, and really it's amazing, it's really turned into this refined style. It was not a refined style in 2016 when we were opening. Boy, there was, ourselves included sometimes. Sometimes there was some stuff that you're yeah, it's a little rough, so it's pretty cool that, it's gotten to that level.
Sure. Are there any other process kinds of things? Because you all you're not centrifuging these beers.
No,
we're not.
No.
And there's only so much that you can filter something like this before you. Yeah.
We're not filtering anything. The fact that we were doing like I was saying earlier, we were transferring from, fermenter to fermenter, cleaning and using that as a bright tank. We did that for a long time. Now we actually have a fleet of bright tanks, but we've implemented, a small lab. So, knowing that we're pitching super healthy yeast is important. It's really
How many
important.
generations do you get out of the Voss?
We take it to about 10. Since we've been doing lab work for the last few years, we were able to stretch it probably to 12. And you start seeing some interesting stuff. And I think we end up, getting new pitch about Gen 12 or something like that. But obviously forced diacetyl testing, we've always done that, but using ALDC and just all these little things like that ensure that the quality is going to be there. And especially when you're trying to move them fast, having ALDC to be there to know that you added that and okay, cool. I feel especially kveik and you're fermenting at 80 degrees, you're not gonna, there's very few times with a hazy IPA that I've not passed a forced diacetyl test with kveik.
Yeah.
Some of the fruited beers, different story.
Okay. Sure. Sure.
They need a little bit more time to clean up, and especially the stuff with blueberry specifically.
Oh yeah. Blueberry.
But yeah.
Well, let's flip around and talk about taking a East Coast approach to brewing West Coast IPA, because I find that idea intriguing, especially because you're approaching that also through the lens of brewers in New York City, brewers around lots of hazy IPA, brewers that brew more hazy IPA than West Coast IPA, but also taking some ideas back and forth between both of those. You're brewing drier hazy IPA, New England or Northeast New England, whatever IPA. How did then as West Coast IPA started leaning out, getting paler caramel malt came out, and this modern West Coast IPA came around that's also a little bit lower in bitterness and with a broader range of hop flavor in it. How did you guys embrace that, and how did you carve out a lane for it?
We are trying to keep as much as I love let's call it San Diego style West Coast IPAs, we're trying to pattern our West Coasts here that are a little bit more, closer to true to type of old school without getting too bitter, because I don't think that, the West Coast IPA drinkers out here are really ready for the old school, palate wrecker, stone IPA.
The Alpha Arms race.
Yeah. The Alpha Arms race. Yeah. So yeah, we've leaned it out, as we started with it, we were doing a little bit of crystal malt, and then we've phased that out and done a split of pale malt and pills with a splash of wheat. So it's lean, but it's not, it still has a little bit of color to it, but yeah, we're trying to keep it bitter, trying to layer the hops in.
How bitter?
We're trying to go 60, 65 IBUs. Yeah. It's
really approachable, but noticeably bitter.
Yeah.
Sure. It's a reasonable place for it.
Yeah. We want it approachable because especially with our core beer, we need to be able to sell that in all over the city. So can't be too extreme as much as I want to make a palate wrecker. We need to sell our beer too.
Nobody makes palate records anymore. In fact, they've gone the other direction with these 40 IBU West Coast IPAs that just feel
No, you want
give me some bitterness.
Yeah, I think we all like bitterness. We're very, very often, I think the combo is I wish I had a little more bitterness, but it's also, they're always insanely drinkable. And I think that means the most to us. It's you can sit down and just drink our West Coast IPAs all night, and you don't get palate fatigue.
Yeah. So how has your New England or hazy brewing approach influenced the other the process or ingredient choices or hop choices in your West Coast IPA?
We've tinkered around with using Nelson in the West Coast. Mm-hmm. We do that.
Just modern hops.
Yeah, we try to keep it
to the classic hops.
Yeah, we try to keep it pretty classic. Whether it's Centennial, we get a lot. We contract all our Centennial and Cascade from Seagull Ranch. So we try to use John's hops, as I found as our salt,
and they do these. He grows these dope high oil. Cascade and Centennial. They're just it's like candy.
Yeah,
they're so fucking good.
So yeah, we
usually shout out to Seagull Ranch.
Yeah, John's the man.
Yeah.
But yeah, we usually will start with some sort of C hop, whether it be name them, and then try to layer in some sort of modern touch to it, whether it be Nelson, Strata.
But I think we're always looking to there's some classic hops, and then there's usually like something that we'll call a modern, Nectaron. Yeah. Something that we might also use in a hazy IPA, and I think that's sort of the like modern twist on it. It's bitterness is moderate, but there, and that's what the hop profile.
Yeah, keep it dry. We try to get them 2 Plato to 1/8 to 2 Plato finishing. We adjust the pH on the back end with phosphoric. Try to keep that, get massive swings after the dry hop where it's pushing up into the 4.7 range, and then it 4.65, and so we'll try to drive it back down to 4.4 as a finishing, because I've noticed that even the 4.65s are a little flabby. So we've that's a process point that I've put in play over the last couple of year and a half or so. So that's, I think, helped make the beers a little bit more snappier. So
yeah, sure. That's a good word, snappy.
Snappy.
Yeah.
Hearing that word a lot lately.
Like our West Coast games on point.
What are some of your favorite hop blends for West Coast IPA? Knowing that you're both have a core and rotators now in this place.
I like Cascade and Nelson, and Centennial. Like that blend is pretty. With like mostly Centennial, Cascade, and like 30% Nelson, I think is really good. If you go too heavy on the Nelson, I think it gets a little like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, crunchy, like that. Like, I don't know, just doesn't.
Yeah, what's Venomous Villains, which is our year-round West Coast. I mean that blend of hops.
It's all class. It's all pretty classic West Coast.
Yeah.
It's mainly Cascade, Seagull Ranch Cascade, with some Centennial, and then splashes of Simcoe and Amarillo. Is basically that beer.
Yeah, I mean that still proves that like those hops are, you use them right, and it tastes as modern as anything else. You don't necessarily have to use a new school hop for it to taste contemporary. I think that's a lot of what we're kind of getting at too. It's like you drink that beer next to something that's been around for 30 years, and they don't necessarily seem, they seem like they're in the same family, but they're like cousins that live in different states.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, we've messed around with yeast strain. Now we're kind of flirting with maybe going back to Chico, but right now we're currently using 3470 and fermenting it cold, but not, we're fermenting at 56 for 50% attenuation, like raising it up to 65 so that we can get a warmer dry hop. We'll raise to 65, let it ferment out, soft crash it, and then dry hop it at 60. It's kind of been our process, and it's been really good, great results. It's not flocking as well as I wanted it to, but but it drops really bright. Once it gets packaged, it drops bright. But yeah, that's what we're messing with now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, you brought up 3470. That seems like a good segue to talk about lager brewing after this. Lager brewing is also, the Welcome to the Underworld Hellas was our beer of the year. You are making lager here in, I wouldn't say it's untraditional, but maybe a little, within constraints that, of vertical cylindriconicals, of a system where you can decoct. It's just very hard to do that. Yes. You do make that choice from time to time, depending on what the beer is. Also, you're doing multiple turns, into, 3 turns on a lot of these beers. in order to make the kind of volume. And so that has some process implications there. In a broad sense, like first let's talk about what some of those core lagers end up being, or do those change seasonally? And then, are there some through lines through how you approach this to make high quality lager, in a craft brew house?
Our lager production, like we used to have a core beer, Janiac Maniac, which was Willamette, and it was just all Willamette. But then Infinite Machine came along, and we were, originally kind of approaching it kind of like a West Coast or a hazy IPA. Like we just do, a bittering charge and like a massive whirlpool. And then as it's evolved, we've tried to like really layer it out. We've do decoction brews, done step mashing. We actually, all our lagers mostly are step mash. And sometimes we do the decoction, but yeah, it's kind of gone down a little bit of a rabbit hole and try to design them template. We like hop forward lager. We use, we try to use the, more like traditional ingredients for making a Czech pale. We try to use Czech yeast. We use Czech malt, Czech hops, like not just Saaz. Like, we brewed this beer. Hopefully we're going to brew it again this fall. Smiling on the inside, and we're messing with Kveik. And because I got tipped off from our pals across the street at Eckhart, who are opening shortly, saying that the Kveik was really good last year. Nice. And he was right. So yeah, we're messing with Kveik and Saaz, and
we probably play with malt and hops more and yeast and lager than anything else.
Yeah, our house lager strain is Omega's Budvar strain. It's kind of like our bread and butter.
What do you like about that?
It's neutral, but it has enough character to it that you can kind of play it into, you can make a Czech pale. You can also make, the Japanese rice lager that we had earlier is that too. So you can kind of like, kind of dress it up however you want, and so I like the versatility of that.
Yeah, like it can be, you can make it European-y.
Yeah.
or just make really, really clean, crisp, Japanese or American lager, right. Even,
yeah, we make
very versatile.
We make a rotational beer called Octobrow that's kind of like a German American light lager. But yeah, it's super neutral, and just really easy drinking. And then, you can make an awesome Czech pale with it too. So.
Yeah, I don't know how many lagers we did last year, but we every May we've been doing it for 4 years now. Lager Appreciation Month
since COVID.
Yeah, like COVID hit, we started something that we like had an idea for years ago. We're like, we should, there's all these industries do like something appreciation month, teachers appreciation month and this, and we always kind of joked about like, lager appreciation month would be really fun because we just always liked brewing them and they weren't like our biggest sellers. And then COVID hit and we happened to have like a couple lagers in fermentation or, in the,
like a lot randomly,
like a lot. We were just, I think we're maybe coming up on summer or whatever it was. And we're like, oh shit. This is because at the time we were selling like a gang load of IPA and double IPA out the door in cans, and we were just like, my God, people aren't buying lager like they do. What do we got to do? We're like, all right, let's do it. Lager Appreciation Month. So long story short, we now every May, leading up to it, like months before, start brewing all these lagers, and I mean doing everything from a 12-week lagered. Czech lager all the way.
We do a 12 Plato, 12 week.
Yeah. And then down to all kinds of experience, something with fruit in it, so, and then throughout the month of May, we release new lagers every week for Lager Appreciation Month and, make it a thing. And it's pretty fun. You know,
Gotten better at planning it.
Yeah.
We start brewing them earlier, and
takes time. All of our lagers, we're doing a minimum, 6 week, production time. So, we're not taking shortcuts, and that takes planning and space. We're in New York City, where we're brewing a lot of beer in a small brewery. That's the right time of the year to do it. It's, early spring's a little slower, so you can, that 12-week lager really was partially
put those in the tank in January, February.
100%.
Things are super quiet.
Yeah, it's partially a product of the season, so it's kind of it's pretty perfect. So yeah, it's fun. And I think that like Bobby and Zach have definitely, like, the last couple of years. I think that's our biggest experimentation, and our team loves it, and our customers love it, and I think we've become really known for it in New York City and around the region, that we're just cranking out some interesting cool lagers.
Yeah, people get excited about it. Like, you see, during that month, repeat people coming in for the new, Fresh Beer Friday release, or we'll do 2 beers in a week, and so we try to do about 8, I think, over the course of the month.
Yeah.
And
it times out well with us, because generally the deadline for our lager issue is the first week in June.
Oh, that's perfect.
And so it seems like you've aligned that nicely to nail it with us.
Well, and funny enough, I think it really is played into the overall trend, especially in our tap room. We went from 5 years ago, top selling draft beer in our tap room would always be IPA or double IPA, then maybe fruited sour, then lager. And now consistently, always best-selling beer every week is lager. Sometimes it's top 2 or 3 are lagers. And then maybe, it's like 2 weeks ago, it was 2 lagers, then hazy pale ale, and then number 5 was one of our first core beers. People are coming into the tap room really looking for lower ABV, more sessionable, and wanting to hang out. And I think that, I don't know if we fed that style to them and that trend to them, or vice versa, but we were very aligned. I think us and our customers were pretty aligned with what they wanted. So I think
it fits what we see across the board, right? And they still might buy a double IPA 4-pack to take home with them. Yep. But here they just, when they're there, they just want to drink something, that's have a couple more rather than have one bigger. So again, it's hard to understand and pick apart all of these trends, because then there's also that 9%, 19, ounce stovepipe that seems to sell like crazy. So
I totally don't have one of those in my fridge right now.
There's these handful of people, so they always come in for imperial stouts.
Yeah,
I can think of 3 people in general, and we're out of imperial stout during the summer, because obviously it's summer. But we pushed out a barrel aged coffee imperial stout just to satisfy
a core demographic.
Keep the people happy. You got to deliver.
Yeah.
Is there anything to your lager process? Again, using a brew house really that's more designed toward for ale brewing, that you find process improvements that have helped you make better lager?
It's all mostly on the cold side, we've knocked out, beer into the tank really cold, not pitched yeast, try to drop, actually I kind of took this off of a Beer Stott podcast that they're on with you, where they will brew into a holding tank, float tank, drop it, and then knock it into a fermenter. I kind of did a version of that. We can't do a float tank. That's just not gonna work. But we can let it sit in there really cold and let it sit for 8 hours before we pitch yeast, dump, and then pitch yeast. At the very end of the end.
To start with clear wort.
Yeah. So some little process tricks like that. I mean, we don't touch the beer with a carb stone unless we absolutely have to. It's over or under, and it's day before packaging. Okay, we got to do it. We got to get the spear out. But, try to do a little bit of a spoon ding to get some natural carb on the beer. And then from there, we're just topping up the headspace to try to like carb it on head pressure. And that's basically our approach to the carb side. But we do a slow step down. We do 3 degrees a day after it hits 3 days terminal, passes VDK. We'll slowly ramp it down, lager at 31 degrees. And I flirted with the pausing at 40 for a little bit, but it's hard to like, make that an SOP with everybody. It's a lot of process stuff. So
sure,
just try to make it easier and let's just step it down 3 degrees a day until we hit terminal, so.
Just be gentle with it. You're doing a long process, and I think that like every step of the way being as gentle as you can with it, with lager. I think that's,
we've done, harvest the yeast you need to harvest, get it out. And then keep, when you think you got it out, try to get it out again. Like do multiple, obviously like troop drops, dump the cone a few times during primary, harvest your yeast, and then
shave the
keep
shave the cone. That's a good
keep
point.
trying after you get the yeast out, do another few more drops because there's still stuff that slides.
Right.
So just get it out is kind of our motto with that.
Yeah, then who needs a centrifuge,
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then you can just basically, by the time you transfer it to the bright, you can pretty much pull from the bottom.
Yep.
Like it's
Nice bright beer.
I've turned the racking arm all the way down and kicked it, and then like went to dump the tank, and it's just like slug of yeast and then just beer. And I'm like, well, that was like probably an extra 5 gallons that we could have taken in there.
There you go.
And just like bled it until we saw bright beer. And
Yep.
Cool. Well, as we wrap up here, let's think about big picture. You guys have been doing this for 9 years now in New York City, slogging it out, holding true, making interesting beers that lean in and that have your own personality to them, that aren't necessarily trying to be the same beers that other brewers in the city that are making. You got an attitude to it. The branding definitely, and the KCBC brand stands out there. Pretty illustrative, pretty wild, and But what do the next 3 to 5 years have in store? Where do you see KCBC going over the next 3 to 5?
I mean, I think the next 3 to 5 years is just like, I think we've been already doing it for a couple of years, but it's, this industry's clearly matured, and it's really put your head down and like focus on like, make the best beers you can, really look at your customers in the industry and see what people want. And like, I think we're very laser focused on like what, how do we grow individual brands? We're very, we're in New York City. We're a very on-premise brand. It's a great on-prem city. We're one of the diamonds in the rough in the industry as far as like on-prem has growth here. There's an endless supply of, bars and restaurants. And, I think us really just focusing on, first and foremost, becoming, being a New York City brand and focusing on our home turf has been, one of our big focuses. And then just, the greater region. And, I think it's just, it's trying to stay a step ahead of the game. It's like, I think, you hear lots of talk, beer's down, people aren't drinking as much, all that, whatever. Take that with a grain of salt. Like, beer's not going anywhere. What do people want? What are the occasions they're drinking in, and how do we get there? And I think it's, I think we're always brewing new stuff. We're always, we have a core, 5 core beers, and I think that was a very, we kind of got ahead of that game with the world of hyper rotation, which we still do a lot of, and that was kind of the generation that we grew up in. Definitely got ahead of the curve by, over the last couple of years having a core portfolio, which is really, I think, just strengthened us overall, just both on-prem and off-prem. And I think, keeping that strong, and then just, keep doing cool stuff that can be innovative and different, and a reason for people to come to our tap room, a reason for people to just know that if there's a KCBC thing on the menu that I don't know that style, I can buy it because I know that it's going to be good. I think that's the focus. It's just,
it's such a wild thing to think about. This city has 8.5 million people in it. Like the state of Colorado has 6 million people in it.
Right.
The state
Really?
of Colorado has 430 breweries serving 6 million people.
Yeah.
And this, could you imagine 430? Actually, would be a third more than that. So all 500 breweries in the city of New York City, to be the same kind of saturation level would be absolutely insane to consider that.
Yeah, the city of New York has 40 some odd breweries. And I don't think that will change much. I mean, I think that, the cost of real estate and production here in New York City is the real.
You have to want to be here and want to do it here to go through all the headaches.
And the best brands on the planet are selling beer here. So you can't rest your laurels on we're local. Now you got to be as good as everybody else, from Sierra Nevada down to neighbors other half, or Grimm or Finback. You got to just it's got to be the best all the time, which I think is just a great thing to have on you, because you can't let up. You just got to grind out.
It's a blessing and a curse at the same time, because you have to, sink or swim. And, you're not just brewing beer in the middle of America where, you just have local competition. It's everybody wants to get their beer in New York City. Yeah. So it keeps you on your toes, and you can't put out subpar stuff. Otherwise you'll go out of business. And
Big Daddy Kane said it ain't no half stepping. Gotta make it the best.
He was ahead of his time,
That is a great place to bring it to a close. G&D Chillers chills the beers you love, partnering with 3,000 plus breweries across North America and beyond, including a couple right here at KCBC. Berkeley yeast bioengineers ordinary strains to make them extraordinary. Exploring mocktails and CBD beverages, Old Orchard is here to help with custom blends featuring specialty ingredients. Release your creativity with the magic of pure, uncut Oregon hops from Indy. Extra Tough has been making rugged and reliable boots for 75 years, and the Brewery Workshop will help prepare you for the challenges of brewery operation. If you enjoyed this podcast, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button. Help us bring great brewing conversations to you every single week. Tony, if people want to learn more about KCBC, either come and enjoy it here in the tap room in Brooklyn, or buy your beer out there at retail, or grab it. Where do they find you all? Where do they learn more from?
You can find us at our tap room here in the Bushwick neighborhood of Brooklyn. We're right off the Jefferson L stop, 381 Troutman Street. You can find us on all your social media at KCBC Beer. And you can find our beer all over the Northeast and the South, and even out in Arizona and Nevada. And, if you're in Tokyo, maybe you can crush some KCBC beers there, or, in the UK. So, look out for us, and, let us know if you want to see KCBC somewhere that we're not, hit us up.
It's been great talking to you all about brewing, Bobby, Tony. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com, or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.